Hey everyone, welcome back to TechBit Academy. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel.
Alright, let's jump straight into this explainer. If you've spent any time at all wrangling digital infrastructure, you already know the old days of dealing with bare metal servers were, frankly, a massive headache. Provisioning a new environment could literally take weeks of procurement, racking, and configuring. Well, today we're going to break down exactly how virtualization solved those headaches, decoupled our software from silicon, reduced deployment times to just seconds, and fundamentally transformed the way we architect computing environments.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll quickly cover the traditional hardware problem, meet the hypervisor, look at the 4 distinct forms of virtualization, discuss the catch with virtual machines, and finally, figure out how to strike the right balance.
All right, Section 1, the traditional hardware problem. Let's look at how we used to do things. This right here perfectly captures our core conflict. On the left, the old way. You had a single operating system permanently tied, literally married, to the motherboard and CPU architecture. Moving a system meant physically lifting a heavy metal box. But on the right, that's the modern paradigm. Decoupled virtual machines. You get incredible flexibility, plus strong fault and security isolation without being chained to the physical hardware underneath.
To really grasp why we desperately needed a revolution, let's look at this traditional stack. Back then, running a single OS per physical machine meant huge software conflicts if you tried to share resources. You couldn't just throw an Exchange server and a SQL database on the same box without risking a total meltdown. So IT had to buy dedicated servers for absolutely everything. And since you had to provision for absolute peak traffic, like Black Friday, those servers literally just sat there, completely idle, 80 to 90% of the time. We were burning money on premium power, cooling, and space for machines that were doing practically nothing.
Which brings us to Section 2, meet the hypervisor. Let's see how we engineered our way out of this mess. Now look at the right side of this setup. The real breakthrough was slipping in that new software layer, the hypervisor, right between the hardware and the operating systems. Its entire job is to break those rigid dependencies we just talked about. By abstracting the physical components, we can bundle an OS and its apps into completely isolated virtual machines. Whether it's a bare metal Type 1 hypervisor sitting right on the hardware or a hosted Type 2, the goal is identical. Run multiple, totally independent environments on the exact same physical hardware without them ever stepping on each other's toes. This abstraction is a total game changer. It pushes a server's utilization rate from a measly 10% up to 80 or 90%.
So what exactly is this thing? Well, a hypervisor, or virtual machine monitor, is simply the software layer making all this virtualization happen. It intercepts hardware calls and dynamically translates them on the fly. But I actually love the history of the name here. Think about it. An operating system is already considered a supervisor of a computer's resources, right? So when they built a new software layer to sit underneath and manage multiple operating systems at once, it became the supervisor of the supervisors, hence the hypervisor. Pretty clever, right?
Moving on to Section 3, forms of virtualization. The crucial thing to remember here is that this decoupling concept doesn't just apply to one thing, it comes in 4 distinct flavors. Let's break them down.
First up is virtual memory. Here, every single application thinks it has its own dedicated, contiguous block of RAM. But behind the scenes, the hypervisor is doing the heavy lifting, dynamically mapping those logical memory addresses to the physical ones. It lets the system page data in and out super efficiently, completely preventing apps from accidentally overwriting each other's data, all while making way better use of the actual physical memory.
Next, we have virtual networks. Take that same decoupling idea and apply it to your connectivity. Apps can operate on their own logical networks, complete with virtual switches, load balancers, the whole 9 yards, totally free from the physical network's hardware limits. This is an absolute massive win for security. It allows for deep microsegmentation, meaning you can completely isolate traffic between VMs on the exact same physical host without running a single new Ethernet cable.
Then, of course, there are virtual servers. This is the classic consolidation play we've been talking about. We encapsulate the OS and the app into an independent, logical server. It runs its own boot sequence, manages its own drivers, and has its own isolated file system. It genuinely operates as if it owns dedicated hardware, completely oblivious to the fact that it's just sharing a physical host with maybe a dozen other virtual servers.
And finally, virtual storage. This gives each app its own logical storage space, entirely independent of the physical hard drives or massive SAN arrays humming away in your data center. By abstracting physical disks into logical pools, it becomes incredibly easy to dynamically provision space, grab instant snapshots, or even migrate massive amounts of data across the network on the fly with absolutely zero system downtime. Section 4, the virtual machine catch. I mean, decoupling all this sounds like absolute magic, doesn't it? But we have to look at the reality of running these environments.
We need to take a step back from this brilliant architecture we've built and ask ourselves a highly practical question. How much is too much?
Because here's the catch, what we often call in the industry the hypervisor tax. Virtual machines are incredibly resource hungry. When you spin up a VM, it's not just running your app cleanly. It has to run a full, complete duplicate of a guest operating system. It's running background services, an independent kernel, and virtual drivers for hardware that doesn't physically exist. You are literally duplicating kernel processes over and over for every single instance on the host. Stack 10 or 20 of these on one server, and that overhead burns through a massive amount of RAM and CPU cycles. That architectural overhead is very real, and it constantly eats into the compute power you actually wanted for your core applications.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, finding the right balance. Let's talk about the strategic reality of managing all of this.
Look at this number. Technically speaking, cramming 500 virtual machines onto a single robust enterprise host is totally possible with today's tech. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. Think about the blast radius. What happens to those 500 perfectly configured, mission-critical environments if that one physical host suddenly suffers a motherboard short? When you factor in that risk, plus the real-world utilization rates and that massive memory overhead we just discussed, you quickly realize that sometimes less really is more. High density is great for efficiency, but it brings a terrifyingly high concentration of risk.
And that leads us perfectly to our final takeaway. Virtualization shouldn't just be a race to consolidate as many servers as possible. It has to actually do something strategic. Are we just blindly stacking VMs so we can brag about clearing rack space, or are we ensuring this technology is optimizing our architecture, improving resilience, and delivering real business value? So, I'll leave you with this thought. The next time you spin up a new virtual machine, ask yourself, are you deploying a necessary tool to solve a problem, or are you just burning valuable CPU cycles simply because the infrastructure lets you?